Okay, cool. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm very excited to be chatting with Melissa here, joining us all the way from Canada. And she's going to be talking about her journey from going from a little virtual assistant all the way into, I mean, you hit six figures quickly. And so I'm very excited to hear about that journey and inspire and give tips to everybody else here. So tell everybody a little bit about your background, how you got started, what made you want to get into the virtual assisting thing, how are things in the beginning for you?
Okay, so my background is in nonprofit management. So I did that for several years and it was great for me, to be honest. Like I really enjoyed it. It was a pretty heavy as far as being emotionally invested. It was a little bit draining. It was a high burnout type of job, but I really did enjoy it. And then after several years, I moved cities and kind of started over. I moved for a man. So
A lot of us have done that. It's okay.
yeah, I did that. So, and then that was good for a couple of years, but then I never kind of found my footing again as far as jobs went. I moved with a job, but then it just didn't work out for me at all. So that was when the job hopping kind of started, and I worked in the schools and I was doing kind of different jobs here and there. And my money situation was getting worse and worse and worse just because I wasn't making the income I had been making. And so my expenses were going up and my income was way down. So I started racking up lots of debt. And
Mm.
so it got to a peak, to a point where I was in way over my head, behind on all of my payments, defaulting on my car
Mm.
payment. And my minimum payments for my credit cards were $1,000 some months, just with over
Wow.
limits and late fees and everything. So I had just collectors calling me all the time and was
Oh
lying
my
to my
gosh, that's
partner.
so stressful.
It was horrible. It was horrible. So at that point, I was working four jobs. So I would get up at 6 in the morning. I'd work from 7 o'clock until 9 p.m. So it was really, I mean, stressful was an understatement.
So, like,
So,
you were trying though. Like, it's not like
oh,
you were, I'm unemployed and I just can't pay my bills. It was like,
yes.
no, like you were really doing it all.
I'm a go-getter, so I was like, I gotta get this under control. But it was just one of those things where the interest was so high that I would be making these huge payments and just be bawling because my principal would go down $15. So I'm
Yeah.
like, how am I ever gonna get out of this situation? Then my relationship fell apart, and at the same time, I was developing chronic health problems.
Well, no
So it was
wonder.
just yeah. So it was everything going on at once. So my health was failing, I was into my up to my eyeballs in debt. My relationship was falling apart. And so I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get out of debt? How am I going to start over? So I moved back to my hometown after being gone for 17 years, moved back in with my mom at age 37,
How'd that
single,
feel?
broke,
Feeling good, huh?
humbling and horrifying at the same time.
That's a good word for it. Humbling, yeah.
Yes, yes. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to focus on my health. Yeah, but unfortunately, things were getting worse with my health. So I really felt like I was kind of hitting my bottom at that point. I didn't know what to do. So I ended up having to go on short-term disability just because of my problem. And so then my income was even further down. So it was a pretty dire situation. Um, and then and then I got pregnant. So it wasn't supposed to happen for me. I was 39 and I was
Yeah.
like, I had a less than 5% chance of getting pregnant. Happened totally unexpectedly and very easily, actually. And so then I'm like, now what am I going to do? So then I was exploring options. Like I'm not going to be able to keep my baby. I can't do it financially. I can't do it because of my health. I can't even provide. So what am I going to do? So my family kind of pulled together and helped me. They were like, we're going to get you through this. And at that point I decided, once I saw the heartbeat and all that kind of thing, I was like, I have to figure this out somehow. But again, my health was really bad. My financial situation was really bad. Everything was bad.
It was like a really
So
rock bottom moment. Like,
it was
my
rock bottom.
goodness. Yeah.
It was rock bottom. Yeah. And so my daughter was, so I have my daughter. It just about died. So I have a near-death experience with my daughter. I developed life-threatening complications. I had to have her almost 6 weeks early. And then we were both in a life or death situation. So I had the emergency surgery, had my baby, and so I had reunited with my ex-boyfriend. That's what happened. So the one that I had moved for, and then it fell apart. We reunited. That was my baby's dad. And then when I was 6 months pregnant, he decided, okay, I'm done for good. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, that's what happened there. So I'm single mom at 6 months pregnant.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I have my baby and I have the support of my family. And when my daughter was 5 months old, I was like, okay, my health had actually kind of started to improve. I was, doing all these things to get back on track, and I was seeing very slow results. And so I thought, okay, by the time she's one, that was kind of when they were going to cut me off of disability, or that was when it's supposed to be a short-term thing because the trajectory was supposed to be improvement with these conditions over time. So then that was what happened. So at 5 months, my baby was 5 months, I was like searching online, Googling, and I should mention that since 2016, I've been looking for ways to work online because it's just always been a dream of mine. I am a people person. I'm like, man, it would be cool to have a flexible schedule and work from home. So I did first I started in network marketing. That was a very, very, very bad decision for me. That actually contributed to my intense debt.
Yes. Nobody ever talks about that.
No, it was just the promise of all of this passive income. And so I was like, sure, I'll charge all these things up because I'm going to be making all my money back. Well, that didn't happen. And then a couple of years later in 2019, I did the English online thing because I'm like, okay, this is going to guarantee me money at least. I'm not gambling with having to sell things. So I do that. I start at 4 o'clock in the morning. And, I'm doing the Chinese exchange time. And then the company downsizes and I lose that job. And so here I am now. I'm like, there's got to be ways to work online. I know people do it. So I'm Googling legitimate ways to work online when my daughter's 5 months old. And I came across a blog that said, be a virtual assistant. And it mentioned this, whoever wrote this blog said, my friend took 90-day VA and was really successful. And so being the skeptic at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do some independent research on this, So I'm on Reddit, I'm doing independent reviews, and everything I read was positive. So
on Reddit, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that's actually where I do a lot of my research is on Reddit because I know it's real people's experiences.
I love Reddit. I'm going to Google my Reddit myself.
Yeah, and it's not, Reddit yourself. And it's unfiltered. So I was like, okay, there'll be the good, bad, and the ugly. And everything was really positive. And so I'm like, hey, but what's the investment kind of thing? And so I start researching the actual 90-day VA course, like the website, and I see the webinar. So I'm like, oh, I've got nothing to lose. I'll watch this hour-and-a-half webinar. And it resonated so much with me because it was the single mom story. And it was, what am I going to do? You were kind of in a situation too, where you're like, I need to make money and I need to like stop commuting and stop spending all this money on daycare. And you kind of were self-taught. And so it was really inspiring for me. So I thought, okay, I got nothing to lose. I got a little tiny bit of savings at this point. And so I'm just going to invest it. I'm counting on making it back. So I was just one of those people where single mom, every second my daughter was asleep, nap times, I would put her to bed in the evening. I worked. Couple of days that I could afford, just one day here and there, I'd put her in daycare so I could just work all day on my Instagram strategy. And I finished in 3 months. And I followed everything in the course, like to a T. And I did the accountability partner thing.
Amazing when people are successful because that's what they'll say. They always say, listen to what Esther says to do because
yes,
you do it, it really does work.
Yeah, it's so true. And there was a couple times where I'm like, I'm not going to quite follow it. I'm going to try to do it my own way. And then I'm like, no. And then I would circle back and I would do it the way that was recommended. And even with the accountability partner, my first two kind of flaked on me and I'm like, I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm just going to keep putting myself out there. And I found an amazing, so I have a friend now in South Africa because she was my accountability partner and she's thinking of coming to Canada. And yeah, it's really cool. And then I was a moderator in the Facebook group because I was like, I really want all the experience, even though I don't really have time.
I really was like, my dogs are going to be fine while I do this case study. It's
all good.
Here they are. Anyway, continue. I hope.
Yeah. No, I love dogs. It's all good.
You were a moderator in the Facebook group.
Yes, I was a moderator in the Facebook group, which was great because it was, helpful for the students, hopefully, and helpful for me. And just, seeing the type of, just getting a bunch of different ideas and just seeing what's out there. So I did that for 2 months. And then right afterwards, I'm like, okay, my daughter is 8 months old now, and I'm just going to go full force. I have 4 months to get myself on my feet till she's 1 and I have to go back to work. And I had my first client within 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. Before you move on, what are the things that you think contributed to being able to get that first client?
Just like I was putting myself out there everywhere. I was talking about it on social media with people in real life. I was doing, the Facebook business page, the Instagram page. I was doing lives. I was showing my face. I was just announcing. And I'm like, I'm ready for feedback if people say you're crazy or you can't do this. I was ready for the imposter syndrome. I did all the mindset stuff. And so I just put myself out there everywhere that I could think of. And
And
so
how did you get that job? Was it when you applied for it? Did you pitch somebody? Did they reach out to you?
it was on a local job board, which I was really surprised. It was a local real estate agent and actually it was low pay. But I know that you said just get started. And I actually at the same time got an internship through VAI Members Club. So I did an internship and a low paying job. But I'm like, I don't care. I just want the exposure and the practice.
Yeah. And when your resume doesn't have anything for virtual assisting, how do you do it? Well,
Yeah. Yeah. And another strategy I had was I'm just going to apply to all of the VAI Members Club jobs. Even if I look silly, I just want the practice doing
yes.
consultations.
Yes.
And I mean, my first consultation, once I had my first client, I started doing the VAI Members Club, and I was just doing consult after consult and just dripping sweat. I was so nervous. I had prepped so much with all of the questions you recommend asking, forgot every single one once I was on the consultation. And I was just like, oh, this has got to get easier over time. And I'm just like, I'm so determined. So I
But
think I did
even the
12.
fact that you booked those consultations means that you were already on the right track because they wouldn't have booked time with you unless you had looked good. So it meant that you were doing the right things. You were just on, it's almost like there's stages, right? Where in the beginning it's like, okay, getting this resume ready to go and sending it is really hard. And then the cover
Yes,
letter is really hard. Okay, well now I got that mastered. Okay, well now the consultation piece,
totally.
like this like step by step, piece by piece that you master as you go.
That was my experience. And I remember Esther's voice in my head. And I remember in the starter pack, you're like, you need to like make whatever they're looking for front and center, like on your cover letter, in your resume, just put it at the top. And that was what I did. I would go through line by line on every job posting and be like, how can I, make this relevant? How can I make this relevant? And every line, I did that for every job I applied for.
It sounds like it
So
worked because if
it
you
did.
and it's such a small nuanced thing that people will forget to do. And the reason I know that is because I've hired people and I'm like, I'm hiring you for an executive assistant role. Why are you sending me your waiter experience? Like,
Right.
so, and then when I say that, they're like, oh, well, duh, but nobody really does it. So good for you.
Well, and you kind of, I think the old school way of thinking is don't have any gaps on your resume. It
I
looks
know.
bad.
And
So
no.
have a 6-page resume with all this irrelevant experience and then, the virtual assistant stuff at the very back. And I
Yeah.
used to be in HR with my nonprofit, so I knew some of it, but again, it's very different in like the real world as if we're
Mhm.
supposed to the virtual world.
Mhm.
So I followed all of that and I did, I think like 12 consultations.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then again, like I started out with low paying jobs and internships, and then so I finished the course in January of 2023, so it's been 6 months, and I just had my first consultation for a $50 an hour job. So
Okay,
yeah,
so what was the rate that you started off? So you finished the
16,
course in January and you did how much per hour?
16,
16,
which
I think
isn't
is still okay. Like when
it
you're
seemed
starting.
low, like compared to my
Yeah,
old management jobs, it seemed
I
low,
know.
but I was like, it's good, it's good for my, it's entry level. I've never done anything like social
Exactly.
media, like, so it was okay. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
It's okay.
whatever. And then that actually blossomed into this lady started a side business and she, integrated me into that as well, where it's like commission based and I'm helping her do funnels and all kinds of things. So that has really evolved.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my second job I got was $25 an hour.
There you go.
And then my third one was 34. And now it's like it's 50. And then I'm starting to get into flat rates. And actually I actually was to the point where I had $60 60-hour a week offers. And I'm like, if I didn't have a child, I could maybe do this and I really want the money, but it just wasn't realistic for me. So I was starting to turn people away at that point because I had
Mhm.
had these consultations and I was getting all of them after I had enough practice. And then I was like, oh, sorry, I can't take anyone else on. And then I'm thinking, how do I now scale up?
Yeah.
And then the imposter syndrome kicked in because I'm like, wait, you've only been a VA for 6 months. You can't scale up. Like, that's ridiculous. But again, it's happening too, where I'm just at the health food store and I'm getting to know the manager because I'm always there. And she's like, hey, when we just were chatting, and she's like, I'm actually quitting to start my reflexology business. And she said, what are you up to? And I said, oh, I started as a virtual assistant. Oh, what do you do? And then, so she just hired me, and I just did her photos and everything for her social media. And then her model that she was working on when I was doing her photos was a wedding photographer. And there's just opportunities everywhere. So I think I've
Yes.
turned down 6 or 8 clients now because I just
Once
don't have the,
you have that, it's almost like putting on a different pair of glasses. Like,
yes.
and you're like, oh, so many people have side hustles and online businesses and this business and that business. They're working at this cafe during the day. And so that's what I think they do. But really, they're doing a reflexology business on the side. And like, that is the norm in most of the world.
Mhm.
And not everybody is an entrepreneur, but a lot of people are, or they have this other passion that they're trying to grow and love to make money from it. So they don't probably think of themselves as an entrepreneur, but all of them need help that VAs can do. The skill set is
Totally.
just like so in demand.
It
Um,
is.
have you found that when you started working with a business that, well, you kind of mentioned it, but I just kind of want to expand it a little bit, that you didn't even realize how much there was that they would love to have you help them with?
No. And then they're like, "Oh, can you be my project manager?" And, "Oh, can you, like, do
Yeah.
you have referrals and can you help me with this?" And or I'm going to write a book now and I need help with this. And
Yeah.
it's just it changes your mindset completely. So you literally are like, this is so easy to get gigs now. Like,
Yes.
yeah. And so now how do I go to the next level where I can start having, a team or start having VAs underneath me that I can refer
Yeah.
to and start a whole other business. So it's really, really been amazing for me. And now my daughter is 13 months old. I never have to, like, I'm home all the time, and it's incredible. Like I could just start crying because I've been trying so hard to work from home, and now to think that I would have to like go and work outside the home with a child and I have no partner to help me. Like it's just been incredible for me. It's just been incredible. And I'm just
I'm
so
so
grateful. I'm
glad.
so grateful.
Are
Yeah.
you able to work your hours around her schedule?
Yes. And that's another I find sort of misnomer is people think, um, especially people who have slightly different time zones or anything, they think, oh, I'm not, it's not the right time for me or it's not. But people are really good about, I just need it done by this day.
Yeah.
So as long as you're kind of organized and you have everything, like for me, I have to be highly organized because I have to be a full-time mom and I have to make sure I meet all my deadlines. And so it does take organization, and that has been but I had learned some of those skills as a manager, but I mean, it's just something you kind of learn as you go, and if you're constantly open to learning but yeah, it's a big confidence builder too, because you're like, like I can do this. I can't believe and how fast it's so
Yeah.
lucrative because even in something like network marketing or any of the other ones, it takes forever to start getting traction. And
Mhm.
this one is just like, how did I go from 16 to like $50 an hour in 6 months? And you
Yeah.
mentioned that in the starter
I
pack, and
do.
I remember being like,
Yeah,
there's no way.
right.
Yeah, no way. There's no way. Yeah. And when you say too, you're like, I'm getting paid this much to do this because it gets pretty easy after a while. But then a lot of people are like, how do you do that? Like, this is incredible. Like, this reel you made, or this, you're so good with your wording, or you're so, and I'm like, it's just practice and
Yeah.
it's just learning as you go because I didn't know how to do any of it at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good thing we should like double down on here is it can be intimidating when you're first starting because you're watching somebody who's already been doing this 10 times and it's your first time doing it. And you're like, how'd they do that in only an hour or two? And how is it such a good quality? It took me 10 hours and mine's still not as good. It's like, well, yeah, it was your first time.
Hmm.
And I always like to use the example of learning a second language too, because it's humbling is a good word for that one too.
Yes.
But like, no, if you're going to take Spanish classes, do you expect yourself to be fluent in Spanish even in the first few months? No, like that's crazy.
Right,
So why do
right,
we put that pressure on ourselves and we get so frustrated? And yeah, practice. You have to practice and then you get better at it. And then you're right. You're like, oh, well, I could write blog posts. Well, now I could write emails and then
right, right.
emails make more money. So, and then like it's so easy. It's like a little stepping stones that you get to go between that aren't as far apart anymore as they maybe were when you were first starting.
Exactly. And you did mention too that you need to be a figure outer, and that is so true because at the
Mhm.
beginning I'm like, oh, this client wants me to use this. Like, hey, I need you to use this CRM and I need you to have all this input by this date. And I'm like, oh, like I've never used it before, but you just learn how to really become resourceful too,
Yes.
very quickly because most, I would say 80% of the things that I was asked to do at the beginning, just with the specific softwares and specific things, I had never even seen them before.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, you become a pro very quickly. And they're all similar, but
Yeah.
they're all slightly different.
Also, like, I think that we think that there's this big boss that's going to look at us and say, you don't know how to use that CRM, or that. But there's not. The business owner
Right.
doesn't really care that you don't know how to use it. They want you to go and figure it out because they do not have time.
It's
And they
so
don't even,
true.
they probably don't have time to train you even. And so they're kind of like, yeah, this might take you a little longer, but I don't have time to train you. So thanks. Bye.
Yeah, but they're willing to like, because if you're honest and you say, "Hey, I've never used this," they are willing, I have found to be like, "Okay, well, if we have to have a little bit more
Totally.
hours at the beginning, that's totally fine. I
Totally.
understand."
Yes. And
Yeah.
I do recommend that to business owners when they're working with somebody is like, don't expect them to know everything. Every business is different. Give them a little bit of, lead time here on some stuff or do some training. But just as a confidence builder for everybody who's starting out, like it is okay that you don't know how to do all of the different softwares and all the different platforms and you're not as fast as they are. It's fine. They do not care. They just need someone to help them.
Yes, it's so true. And it's so true what you say too, how they're a little bit all over the place because they're like, I want to do this, I need to do
Yeah.
funnels, I need to do email marketing,
Yeah.
and how do I do this? And how do I increase my followers? And I want to write a book and I want to start this business. And they kind of need someone to streamline them a little bit too and just be
Yeah.
like, hey, make sure you get this done and make sure you get this done. And they need a little bit of help to keep
Mhm.
them organized, I find, because they're a little bit all over the place
Yes.
sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah, virtual assistants, executive virtual assistants. I do feel like that is definitely part of the role. It's almost like you're a coordinator and you're helping to prioritize. So, do you still want these to be the priorities? Like, are these still things
yes,
we're focusing on? Because if they are, then I need this from you. Or do you want me to drop this off and go focus on this other thing that you're all excited about? And they're kind of
totally.
like, no, you're right. Just these things. You're like,
That's
okay.
exactly how it is.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, you have to be a little bit, go with the flow in some ways, but it's been a great learning experience. So
And you get to work on lots of different things, which is fun too. It's so much more dynamic than other jobs that I've ever had, which are just kind of boring. I mean, in software, that was cool because we did a new launch every single, couple of weeks, we'd release a new thing in software. So that was kind of, interesting to do new stuff all the time. But otherwise, like so many jobs are so repetitive. And when you work as a VA, you do so many different types of things for different pieces of the business. Like you're never bored.
totally. And it is like I remember you had mentioned something that where you said, "Oh, isn't it true that people are wanting to offload to someone who will work for $3 an hour or $5 an hour?" That was a fear of mine going into it. Like
Yeah, let's talk about that. What have you found?
it's not the case. I mean, I find that a lot of time they are wanting someone who, and I don't mean this in any kind of condescending way, but like they want someone who speaks English as a first language just because they're very, very particular about how they want things worded and they're willing to, I find that social media, they're so overwhelmed by it. They're like, I need to be on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, but I'm so overwhelmed. I don't have time. And they're willing to pay good money for someone to be that presence for them on social media because it is such a huge part of business. And they're like, I hate social media or I hate writing emails. Like, I just need someone to do it and do a great job, and I'm willing to pay for it.
Yes.
That's the attitude that I have found.
Yes, absolutely. I would totally agree with you. And then the
Mm,
business owners who do not have those as values, it just means they're not a good fit to work with you. And that's okay too. Like they can go and find somebody else. Like there's enough work for everybody.
for
But
sure.
you're right. If that fear of, oh, well, no one's going to want to hire me when they can hire somebody out of the Philippines for only like less than $10 per hour, it's just like not always true. And we have thousands of people who have jobs who aren't in the Philippines. So we
Totally.
you know?
Yes, it's so true. Yeah, and so it's just literally exactly what you say going through the starter pack and through the course has been my experience. Extremely like that's been my experience completely with how you explain things in the course.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. And I just have to say it again that you went from $15 per hour to $50 per hour and fully booked out in January, February, March, April, May, June, 7 months. No, 6 months. 6 months.
Yeah,
That's incredible. And you're a single mom working around your kid's schedule. Like so inspiring. I'm so proud of you. You killed
Thank
it.
you. Yeah, and I'm just so grateful because like I said, I have been looking for something like this for so long and I'm like more people need to know this. So I became
Yeah,
an affiliate and I have a few friends that are doing the course right now
good.
and it's the same type of experience. Like it's yeah, because right away when you want to work online and you put it on social media, they're like, "Hey, I have this great company that you could join." You know, and it's always network marketing.
Yeah.
So that was my experience at first and then you have the sort of teaching English online. And then there's the other ones where you can start something from scratch, like writing a blog. And then like I had tried that and then trying to monetize it, but it's so slow. Like it takes so long to really become lucrative. And so there was nothing that I had found that was like this, where you can scale up so fast if you're willing to do the work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We should touch on that because I think that I love people who are entrepreneurial and want to be a VA. And often there may be another like business that you want to do, that maybe you do want to have a t-shirt company or you do want to have an art thing, but that stuff is going to take a very, very long time. And so a lot of business owners or startup-y type people will do the VA thing at the same time because you get
Yes.
income right away. And like, yeah, and it's flexible. So you could do it for 20 hours a week, you make 30 per hour, and then you work another 10 to 20 hours on your other thing that you're trying to grow. And it doesn't feel like this is a waste of time, the VA stuff, because you learn so much about online business and how to run everything. That's what I did. And by the time I went to go build my own course, I'd already built 50 for other people and already knew how to do it
Right.
all. I
Yeah.
got paid to know how to run a business.
It's so true. It's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a really
totally.
cool opportunity to be able to earn an income flexibly from home. It really checks all the boxes that people like in the online business space without really having to be an online business owner. Because once you get your list of clients, like that's it, you're done. You don't have to keep marketing yourself all the time. And other than
Right.
that, like typically, unless it's project based work, you have a couple of clients on your roster. They pay you every month. You work for them. It's like a job. So it's a really interesting, cool little thing that I'm
It
glad that you.
really is. Yeah, it's been amazing for me. So again, thank you.
Good. All right. Well, so one last question that I wanted to end on was, and we kind of touched on it, but let's summarize the types of people that you think would be good candidates for 90-day VA or for being a virtual assistant.
hmm So people who are like me, who would dream, my passion, I mean, I've had diabetes for 25 years, and I know who, a lot of people in my online community are diabetics like me, and that doesn't limit you necessarily, but sometimes it's like, oh, it's overwhelming to have a chronic condition you're managing all the time and going to work and having a boss breathing down your neck and telling you when you can have a snack and telling you you can stop.
Mm.
How can I work from home? So someone who has maybe some chronic health problems
Yeah.
that just it's overwhelming to have to get up at 6 in the morning and commute and take your kids to daycare. That's huge. Single moms or, people who are trying to provide a good income for their family, but again, and you don't want to have all of the extra expenses like daycare and transportation and all those things where you can work around your kid's schedule. You put your kid to bed and then you can work for a few hours or work
Yeah.
while they're napping. I mean, it's like a dream come true. So
It
those
is.
are kind of the two people that really, and also people who you don't have to be necessarily someone who wants to start a big, huge VA business. Like that might be something that I maybe want to scale up to, but you can just you can call it a VA business, but you're working for yourself, you're self-employed, and you can control how much you do. And it's not and also the investment is not this huge investment because there
Yeah.
were other things that I had looked at that's like, you have to invest 6, 7 grand just to get started. And
Mhm.
this is something, so if you are a single mom or if you are someone who's on a very limited income
Yeah.
right now, it's not a huge investment. And I made it back so quickly. So I mean, it was in the first month or two that I made my investment back.
Yeah.
So
That's a really
that's
good
another thing too, is people who are maybe struggling and don't have huge amounts of upfront money to
point. Mhm.
invest in something that will turn it around. You'll earn it back quickly. So
There's a very low barrier to entry is the way that we like to phrase it. You don't need a whole bunch of money to get started and you don't need like a degree and years of experience and like all this stuff to get started. Like you invest in a training, you learn some skills, you learn how to get the work, and then you're done.
and you don't have to sell anything.
Yeah, you don't have to sell anything.
It's
It's
great. There's
true.
really nothing else like it. Like I don't know what else. And my friend who just started the course, he's like, I don't know anything. He has a similar backstory to me. He's like, I don't know anything else that's like this. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's why I tell people about it.
It's very unique. Yes.
And it's not, and it's not, it doesn't have to be women. It's not just a woman only business either. I don't think like you can men, women, like any type of background. Like you said, you don't have to have a degree in business management or, you know, administrative assisting or anything. I don't have that. So
Yeah.
again, you don't have to have that startup.
We definitely have men, non-binary, all different kinds of people in the program. I will say that I think one of the reasons it's so popular with women is because of the childcare crisis that we are in, and that there's
Yes.
so many single moms that are just stuck and like there's no options for us because nobody thinks about it. If you're married, you haven't thought about it, but like if you are a single parent and your child is sick, that's it. Who's going to work? Who's making the money? Like you're stuck. And I'm sure that two parents deal with this kind of issue too, but it's just like especially a big issue for single parents. And that's why like so many of them live in poverty is because like there's
Yeah.
no way to deal with it. And that's even if you can afford childcare on the money that you're making. So it's really,
And
really tough. And so it's really solved that issue for so many people. And I'm so very thankful that people like you are getting the help that they need with that, because you're right. It's life-changing. And it's also life-changing for you have a daughter or a son?
daughter. Yeah.
It's also life-changing for your daughter now that I think about it. She gets to have her mom around and she gets to see her mom doing all of this stuff and like making it, and how inspiring for the next generation of people that, oh, I don't have to do it that way. I can
So
do it
true.
this other way. So it's really a cool legacy that you get to leave.
And my
Thank you.
daughter just did, I just want, can I just make one more comment?
Please. Yeah.
My daughter did just have her first sickness last week and we had to reschedule this or whatever, but she was just sick for the first time. And I was just so thankful. I said to my mom, I'm so thankful that I don't have to deal with a crying
Yeah.
kid all night who has a high fever and is sick. And I
Yeah.
don't have to get up at 6 o'clock and, figure out, okay, she can't go to daycare because she's sick. So I have to keep her home. What do? I lose out on all the money I'd be making at my job. I can't take sick days or whatever. And it just became even more real to me, like how grateful I am for this because
Really important. Yeah.
mhm,
This is
yeah,
important. The work that I do is like, this is my purpose in life, is helping people to have flexible careers, because particularly women, because the problem I would use like an epidemic, like in our culture, like it's a really big issue that nobody really is dealing with. And so we're dealing with it ourselves. Like we do everything.
totally, totally. I agree.
Well, thank you very much, Melissa, for sharing your story and being so vulnerable with us and sharing that like very low that you hit. I was very inspired, and I'm sure a lot of other people were too, whether it's chronic illness or they are solo parenting a lot, or they are a single parent, or they just know they want to have kids and they're like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. This was really, really helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.